Hi, Melissa.
Good. How's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks. Hello, Rod.
How you doing?
Hello, Ernie, standing next to his car. Either his car or the car that Nazis drive in Indiana Jones.
He's stolen it.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Jackie.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
You changed locations.
Yeah, you know, I get the western sun into my office at this time, and so it's it just washes out the whole screen. Yeah.
It's
So
good to change.
I'm in my northern location, facing north right now.
Very nice.
Yeah. How are you all? Everybody's good?
Yep.
Good. That's good. Let's see who we got here. I'll open up the whole thing.
Hey, Leah.
Hello. You're in a different place.
I am. I'm changing offices. It's very exciting.
It can be.
I have a washer and dryer in my office now, so that's pretty exciting.
I speak to some people that their washer and dryer is their office.
Okay. I got a table.
Yeah.
So there's this other behavior of people doing Zoom from their closets because the clothing deadens the sound. Like you can't hear the children and the dogs screaming, and they can't hear you.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I regularly meet with somebody and they're doing it from their closet, and every now and again, like the arm of an old sports coat or something gets in there, sort of like, it's pretty.
Never mind what you see.
Right, it's sort of like, okay.
Yeah. I once, for the work that I do, I talk to clients regularly, and because of COVID, a lot of people are working from home and in different locations. And I remember there was this one person I was talking to, and I just had to stop the conversation and just say, "I'm sorry, what is that in the background?" And she said, "Oh, that noise is my parakeet. He gets very upset if I don't talk to him all the time." It was screaming, and I was just like,
Wow.
"Oh my gosh, he sounds unhappy."
It's a lot.
Right.
Anyway.
It's been a while since I've encountered a parakeet. Wow. Okay.
I had like a 3 or 4-year-old hijack a meeting the other day. Whoever was computer it was, she just left. And this little kid just comes up and starts talking. So we just included him in the meeting. He was the cutest kid ever. And he was just like, yeah, she left. I don't know. He was all into it though. So it was good.
Good. Great.
I know.
So we're waiting on Jeff
Jeff Goodrich,
Goodrich.
I believe. I didn't get any communication from Jeff Goodrich saying he couldn't make it, but we all should know that Jeff LaBelle is doing double duty because we switched the nights with the select board. It meant that I couldn't make it to the annual meeting of the Two Rivers Regional Planning Commission. So Jeff has very kindly volunteered to do that
Good.
up until the item that he really wants to discuss is, and then I think he's gonna do some version of hiding in the closet or something, and then connect with
Good.
us without letting tourists know that he's double. I don't know.
It sounds
Yeah,
like
so
I Love Lucy. It sounds like I Love Lucy. You know, when
Yeah.
they're coming
Yeah.
in the front door and they're going out the back door.
Right. So
Yeah, so we have to remember to text him give him a little heads up that we're
yeah, he
coming
just
to his
he just
item.
gave me, in typical fashion, just gave me another reminder via email with the phone number to text him.
Oh, I got it too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think technically you can go. I mean,
All right.
you got 5. So
I got 5. Let's go. So we'll call the meeting to order at 6:36. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? All right. The agenda is approved. Meeting objectives. We're going to review the draft of the town plan action items, assignments, and next steps that we bumped from the last meeting. We're going to discuss scope and duties of the sewer working group, discuss affordable housing subcommittee recruitment, and finally discuss next steps on the town wastewater study. Do we have any comments from the public? Anyone there, Rob?
we don't even have any. So
Great.
they must have thought this was a select board and they just can't do it anymore.
Yeah, we're a lot less entertaining. Okay, so we have to review and approve the minutes from 4:23 and 5:28. I don't know if everyone had a chance to review them.
Mhm.
Okay, motion to approve the minutes from the April 23rd, 2020 meeting. Jackie,
So moved.
Second.
Ernie, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Same thing for the 5:28, 20 minutes. Any changes?
Just
Jackie.
move to approve.
Move to approve. Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Announcements, reports, updates. We didn't have any correspondence, but Rod, you had an update on the Two Rivers?
Yeah, just that, to confirm that they're, I've lost count. They have to, I think, of the number of times that they've attempted to approve it, the original plan, but it's up for approval on July 1st.
July
Okay.
1st, you said? The 1st?
Yeah, so July 1st, which I guess is next week, now that I'm thinking about it very carefully. And it's probably a meeting I will attend, and I will probably vote to approve it. So they've been in lengthy negotiations with 4 different towns over various sections to do with the land use plan. My understanding is that they've come to some kind of understanding about how that's going to work out. And I think for the most part, most of the towns are mostly happy, which means that they think that they can go forward. And so if you remember, just to look for a moment, they were going to have this adopted or approved in October. And they had a really aggressive schedule and kind of hit the wall with lots of criticism from a handful of towns, and so it's taken this long to really iron out those issues. So. Yeah.
Rod, just question, what vote is approved to, what vote is required to approve it? Is it just majority of the board? Is that how it works?
I believe it's 2/3. I think it's 2/3 majority. So it's a pretty significant lift for them. I hate using that term, but okay. So it's hard to do to get to a 2/3 majority, but that's, I think, the requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it looks like that's on a Wednesday, just in
Yep.
case anyone was curious. Brian, any updates on the Affordable Housing Subcommittee?
No, not really, other than the agenda items that we have
Great.
here about recruitment.
Sounds good, thanks. There's no reports.
I would say that we formed little working groups. Sorry, Jackie, you're trying to.
No, go ahead, keep going on the affordable housing. I have another question, that's all.
Yeah, so we formed 3 little working groups, although nothing has really happened with them as far as I know yet.
And I'm sorry, Leah, you were also on the Affordable Housing Subcommittee? Sorry,
Oh,
I didn't mean to.
I was a member of the public that I'm being recruited. So I was there at the meeting, and then
She
I
is
agree with Brian.
enthusiastic.
Say that again?
She's so enthusiastic to the
No,
point.
no.
The point that we've made it a point, as we'll see later in our request for a new member, that to be on a working group or to be on, like, you don't have to be on the subcommittee. To be on the subcommittee, you don't have to be a resident. The aim is for inclusion. So
Right. So I
happy to-
think, thank you. So I think, well, I was just being specific because I think Melissa was just asking if I had anything to add or if I'm on the committee. So I
I didn't
agree
want
with,
to.
thank you. I agree with everything that Brian shared with the update and can save comments for the agenda item.
Great, thanks to both of you. Okay. Oh,
Melissa,
sorry, Jackie.
I just have a question, another under the heading of update. The, let's see if I say this right, the hazard mitigation plan, is that what it's called? That thing,
Yeah.
scheduling meetings for the town. Rod, could you just give us an update on that? That would be helpful.
Sure. So the big news is that the meetings have been pretty robust and active, and there's been what I would describe, compared to previous hazard mitigation plans that I've been involved with, quite an expansion in scope in terms of identifying hazard, including things such as active shooter scenarios and cyber attacks, which are customarily, well, I don't know how to say this. I think in the past, those things have certainly been acknowledged, but not necessarily regarded as the purview of a hazard mitigation plan, which has traditionally had a very FEMA natural disaster-y kind of focus. And so
Right.
that's an interesting step out from that approach. And that's entailed a lot of discussion amongst the small group that's been working on it. And that has, to some extent, slowed things down, just in an effort to resolve what people think are the most likely hazards, and then what the predicted impact of such a hazard would be. And so, because these are new items, there's been some conversation around those kinds of things. The other thing that's happened is just the friction of Zooming and getting it together, and then the resignation of the planner from Two Rivers that was assigned to it. She is moving on, but the handoff to her replacement, Kim Gilbert, has been pretty seamless. In fact, there's a bit of an overlap in the last meeting. So the short answer is that things are going a little slower than expected, but the quality of the discussion, at least, has been pretty good. So more engaged than many of the efforts I've been involved in the past.
Can any of this help us with CRS at all, would you say? Not really?
How do I describe this? You can have a hazard mitigation plan without being in the CRS. You can't really be involved. You can't be in the community rating system without having a hazard mitigation plan.
Oh, okay. So it's a precursor. Okay.
So it's a critical piece.
Mm-hmm.
They're slightly different bus rides. You know, they're not exactly the same thing. But I think in particular, the natural disaster discussion and the response to natural disasters, and in Norwich, like most of northern New England, the single most likely event, hazardous event, would be a storm similar to the one in July 2017. And the impact can be widespread, and it can be extremely expensive and extremely difficult for the town to respond to, both narrowly as a government and then broadly as a community. So a lot of the core of this plan will still address those kinds of things, like culvert inventories, replacing culverts, fixing, making sure that no areas that are known to have not done well in previous events are being looked at and examined. It feeds back ultimately into the Planning Commission question when we come around to doing the zoning rewrite, where if you were to take, at least some of the strands from the hazard mitigation plan seriously, you would look to really reflect on the impact of dispersed settlement and the challenge of maintaining roads and drainage systems for those roads with very low density residents, a low density of settlement on those roads, and just the cost and complexity of that, and then also the environmental impact as a consequence. Okay. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you.
Great. Anything?
So, the only other thing is that I've had a conversation with various school people about the wastewater question, but I think what I'll do, it'll make more sense to talk about that when we get to the wastewater study topic, which is further down. Number 9.
Okay, great.
Brian?
Can I just ask about the hazard mitigation?
Yep.
Refresh. The old one did not give much attention to drought, which now might be on some folks' minds. They ranked it as a quite a low risk.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's been no communication from the town or the regional commission about the issue. And I wonder if it will move up in the list of priorities.
As I watch things die out the window, yeah, I appreciate your concern. There was an interesting piece on Daybreak this morning.
Yeah, I saw
A
that
link-
map.
a link
Unbelievable.
to a map from the USGS. It was a little hard to interpret what it actually meant, but you know, red being bad and green being good, northern New England was all, you know, all red when it came to the stream flow that was measured in the last, I think, 8 to 10 years, depending on where you're looking, which is to say, we, compared to the rest of the country, and I mean by this even, you know, more traditionally arid parts of the country, it would appear as if northern New England has suffered a much bigger reduction in the median stream flow on any one day than in just about any other part of the country, which is to point to some larger scale impacts from climate change. But I think to get back to your point, yeah, we're in a drought. Drought is not regarded as a, you know, customarily has not been regarded as a thing that northern New Englanders have to obsess or be concerned about. I think
Maybe in towns with municipal water.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I mean, what I'd say there is that if people start really getting into it, or I should preface this by saying, when I grew up in Australia, I never wasn't on a municipal water system or a metropolitan water system. They were usually metropolitan scale. The city I lived in was 140 miles across, east to west, and 200 miles north to south. And so it looked like LA. And it was one water system for the entire thing with one system. And believe me, when there were droughts, yeah, you knew about it because they would just turn it off, actually. And you would be arrested if you washed your car, you know, like, and people would actually call a number. There was a special number, or somebody was found washing their car, and they would be around within minutes and you were done. Like, it was okay to knock over the local booze shop, but it was not okay to wash your car. It was, you know, like, you'd be forgiven and just told that you shouldn't do that if you tried to knock over the local booze shop, but you were really gonna be in big trouble if you washed your car. So, well, I guess what I'm trying to point out is, at some point, it's still a water system. It's still got to come from somewhere, and it's still a natural collection of water. And if you've got 5 million people using it too fast, there's still a drought response. I don't think the Connecticut River looks that low, although it looks a little low-ish. That's where most of the towns around here would pull their water from if they were going to pull it. So that would be Hartford, right? White River Junction pulls from the Connecticut River. I don't know what it would take before they would start getting, you know, concerned about that. So yeah, a drought is actually, it's a good concern to raise.
Is there a threat of fire, Rod?
What's that?
Is there a threat of fire?
Is it actually, Charlotte Metcalf was in the last meeting and she raised the threat of fire, which I thought was a really solid point. And because I think that the other thing that's happening with going back to that Daybreak piece is, if our climate conditions are changing so dramatically, we could well be exposed to wildfires in a way that we haven't been exposed to before. Of course, we don't have the Australian or the Californian thing of exploding trees because they've got oil in them, but which is always fun. The first one you see is pretty memorable. But I do think that, for instance, our fire department's not really in a position to you know, fight a robust wildfire. We have minimal equipment. You know, when I think of, again, where I grew up, you know, a town Norwach's size in Australia with woods would have a much bigger set of contingent of firefighters and equipment to deal with wildfires, and not so much for houses, right? So there actually are some serious questions that probably should be asked following on from this. I don't know how long this drought's going to last. And you know, I don't see any discussion of it, which is sort of interesting. And I'm glad you brought it up, Brian, because I've not received anything, for instance, from the Regional Planning Commission or anywhere else going, we're going to have to start meeting to talk about what we're going to do about the drought. But I don't think it's the same as what I'm used to, which is livestock being euthanized, or, you know, no one washing their car, and the, you know, I don't see those kind of Californian or Australian style responses where basically, you know, there's a social stigma attached to using water for anything but essential needs, and people start getting farmers would end up getting compensated for having to euthanize their stock.
Because it's all private, it's a private cost. It's not a public burden the same way. It's individual homeowners.
It's
suffering.
a classic Northern New England problem, which is many things that would be regarded as a public cost or a public issue in the rest of the country, because there's a scale of service or a scale of delivery that means that it's a public utility type function, right? Yeah, it's privatized. It's just like your well, like you've got a well. Are you on town water, or do you have a well?
Well,
You have a well, and you have a septic system, so it's all your problem, right? And so that is the outside of relatively large communities. That's the Northern New England kind of response. It's really like your problem. I mean, I don't mean that nastily. I just mean that that's the scale at which it's done. And he's raising his hand. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of following up what Brian's talking about. Is there like any mapping of the aquifers, or are there even aquifers under this area? I understand there are, but I don't know if anyone knows their limits, or how big they are, what they are, or anything like that. And, you know, especially when everyone's got wells, that becomes an issue, because people are connected by the aquifer to the wells.
Right.
Through their wells. And, hazard mitigation would probably include, telling people, even though you got a well, you got to consider the fact that there are other people on that same aquifer, if the aquifers are mapped anyways, or in any way known where they are.
Right.
Okay. That's also an interesting question. I think there is some mapping of aquifers at the narrow scale. In Norwich, we have limits on development in the area where they're above the aquifer, where we pull water to supply the village.
Yeah, but I'm talking about any other aquifers that might be,
right.
Like in Western Norwich, for
Right.
instance.
And I'm assuming that that's part of a bigger system. Jeff's just joined. Jeff Goodrich has just joined, so maybe he knows more about it than I do. So Jeff, hello.
Surprise.
We're talking about the hazard mitigation plan and the absence of discussion of drought as a hazard, and drought as a potential, what's the probability of a drought, and then what is the likely impact of a drought. And then Ernie's question was related to the mapping of local and regional aquifers. And by regional, I mean on the geological scale, not just the Two Rivers Regional Planning Commission regional scale. So what do you know about aquifer mapping, if anything? And yeah.
I know more than enough to be dangerous. So in terms of hazard mitigation, the Norwich water supply is the Connecticut River.
Yep.
So it's a fantastic slow sand filter or rapid sand filter, depending how you look at it. I don't really see that as a real issue unless there's a worldwide drought. With respect to aquifer mapping, I think with folks like Craig Heindel and Steve Revell and others, and I can't remember what the geological committee's name is, but the Agency of Natural Resources has a fantastic aquifer mapping program. I think I haven't looked at the Vermont Center for Geographic Information recently about aquifers, but I think they map all the aquifer data as well.
That's what I thought too.
And it's good stuff. It's really good stuff, actually. And it's predicated primarily on, past study information. Anyway, it's good stuff.
Yeah. So Ernie, was your concern that similar to the huge aquifer in the Central Plains that?
Oh, I'm thinking of more local. I wasn't aware that there are actually any particularly large ones around here, but I don't really know for a fact. I just am thinking of it in terms of, people in any particular part of the town. From what I can tell, the town's actually got a couple of geological sections. So the aquifers are there might be several in the town alone. And I'm just thinking about, in terms of, let's pretend we have this drought goes on and on, like in California. People who have wells, as they draw, if the aquifer is not getting refreshed by rain and any other sort of water, and let's say on the western side of Norwich, it's only got the White River, whereas the eastern side it's got a much bigger water course running through it to refresh it. But it'll be easy to drain down small aquifers. And if one party has got ornamental fountains all over their property, and everyone else around them has got just their own well, at some point somebody's going to tell the person with the fountains, you got to stop it, because no one else has got water to drink. And that's kind of an exaggeration, but that's the sort of the thing I'm concerned about.
Jeff Goodrich, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, a couple of quick things. So the John Langus thing on the listserv was because he didn't change his water filters. Just saying. That aside, the state has also addressed with water and wastewater permitting a threshold of 560 gallons per system. So if your bedrooms exceed a flow of 560 gallons per day, and I have to do the math, I think that might be 6 bedrooms. Think about it.
It is 6, I think.
Then you have to do special testing on your well to make sure that you have adequate well yield over an extended period. So the state has already addressed this in a different context. And I'm not personally aware of drought issues in our immediate region in the context of individual homes.
Right. One thing I would say is that I'm aware of one individual home in Norwich that was required when they went from 6 to 11 bedrooms to do the well test, because you just never know when 5 families are going to turn up and stay the night. So yeah.
I just have a different perspective, because I've had to be in the case of a plaintiff. I was working for a plaintiff whose well dried up when another on the other side of a ridge started drawing a lot of water, a newly built house that hadn't been there before, and the water first went bad and then it dried up, and there was a lot of blasting and all kinds of stuff, and it was fairly clear. But the point I'm making is that's the kind of relationship I'm talking about, that aquifers and wells create.
Right.
Great. Is there any action steps we're taking out of this, or is this just a?
I think it should be mentioned by Rod at the next hazard mitigation meeting. Do you agree? At least mention it, bring it up as a topic.
To help me, I'm gonna ask Jeff Goodrich, because of his professional experience and because he's lived here for 400 or 500 years now. What in his mind? Yeah, right. Well, look at that. Is this a worrying? I mean, the current drought that people are beginning to discuss. Do you feel like this is more severe than previous droughts in any way, or do you think do you feel this one's cause for concern, or like other droughts, it will pass?
Yeah, personally, I think this will pass. I mean, I think the historic issue was water quality, and I'm going to get this wrong, but water quality ranked A, best, B, C, D, kind of worse. The Connecticut River was a D ranking. It was relatively poor. It's now A. It's really good shape. And then there's stuff with CREL and TCEs and so forth. So our main water supply comes from the river. I think what's interesting to me is when Great Upper Valley Solid Waste District went through years of studies to create the Heartland landfill, for more or less. The gravel pit where the well is, the gravel pack well that serves our community, was a possible landfill site. So anyway, I believe that there's an extensive record of, water flow along the river corridor, and I just don't see this as a significant concern unless there's some contaminant that gets released.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I'd just say, just observationally from somebody that grew up somewhere much more arid than this, I know it's really dry, which I sort of enjoy. And, some of the grass has died, but there's still lots of grass. And so, which would be the basic measure. It's when you go for years and there is just zero grass, or, and you see it in California and Arizona, where people actually just give up on the concept of gardening, and they have,
Pebbles.
they do xeriscaping. They re-landscape with plants that basically don't require vast amounts of water. We're so far from that. I mean, just look out the window and it's like this wall of green. It's hard for me to think of it as a drought, but I'm sure that those that have lived here for a long time think it's a really serious drought.
Well, thanks to both of you.
Yeah,
Okay.
that
You're
was really informative.
Okay.
Are we ready to move on to the town plan?
Yep.
So the next thing is to talk about the action items and the next steps. Rod, we had some contact from Craig, Conservation Commission, right?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've got down here for the Trails Committee, Craig belatedly pointed out, or that first of all, the Trails Committee in that unique Norwich structure is a subcommittee of the Conservation Commission. And so really when they're figuring out what they're going to do in a year or whatever, they will work, the Trails Committee will take its cues from the Conservation Commission. And the Conservation Commission is really if you like, the sort of the policy setting venue, and the Trails Committee are the action figures who go out and hike and ride the trails and build the trails and maintain the trails. And so it's a slightly different group of people with a different focus. So
It's kind of like the Affordable Housing Committee, Rod? Is that how you'd characterize
they're
it?
the action committee.
Action figures.
That's right. That's right. They are the go-getters of
Yeah,
the
the go-getters.
Planning Commission. So if you look at item number 19, I believe, under trails, either in the beginning, like 4 pages, and then under Trails Committee action items, that should probably move to the Conservation Commission. And it should be the Conservation Commission's charge to come up with a master plan for future trails. And Craig, just in case anyone else didn't see the email, Craig's point was also a good one, which is for the Conservation Commission to do this, there'll be other things that they will be taking into account, like forest block integrity and those kinds of things, which is more appropriate at their level rather than the Trails Committee. They're really just trying to push through a trail or maintain an existing trail.
Okay.
But they sounded like they would take the lead on their bullet points.
Yeah.
Was my understanding. Okay.
Yeah, and so we can, after
It's one-
checking with Craig, I mean, my understanding is that Craig's happy to pick this up and run with it. And so the Conservation Commission will figure out where in their work plan they're going to do this work item, which is develop the master plan.
Yeah, so they have 4, the Conservation Commission has 4 actions instead of 2, if I'm counting correctly. I think I'm counting correctly. Yeah, they have 2 actions otherwise. And now we added 2 from the trails. We just folded it under.
You want to take both 19 and 44 across to the Conservation Commission? Is that what you're saying, Jackie?
Isn't that what you just said?
I was just really referring to number 19. I'm not sure exactly what implement the strategic initiatives developed by the town's Trails Committee is.
Okay.
Sounds good, but I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah.
It could be eat
It
lots
may
of
have been,
chocolate.
it may have been lifted, it may have been lifted, you know, when the translation was made in softwares, it could have been an error. We can re-examine that, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can check back with the plan, but I
Yeah.
think both of those were listed as Trails Committee items.
Mhm.
Okay.
And Jackie, not to put you on the spot, but did you offer at one time to be the person that would just kind of poke people
Yes.
and get them awake?
Yes, yes, so exactly. This is, well, yeah, I mean, I think what the service that we can provide to the groups that are mentioned in the action plan is to lift their action items up into one page or whatever it is, a page and a half or 2 pages. And I'd just like to communicate it to those people. And so they're aware, you know, these are your action items that are included in the town plan. In addition, under responsibilities, there's a lot of shared responsibilities. So for example, if you look at the first page, we've got the town manager and the select board working on one item. We have the planning director and the town manager and the select board working on the next item. Then we have the planning commission. We have our items, which we've already discussed, the 2020 items. That's what we're working on now. In any event, just familiarize the groups with the action items, I think is the only purpose of this agenda item. And I will take the lead at packaging this, which I've started to do. That's what the document you have in front of you, and just communicating it to those people. I'd be happy to do that.
Great. And you'll let us know if you need any assistance, if it's...
Yeah, I'll report back at the next meeting if, you know, any questions that came up or whatever happened. I'll report that back.
Okay. Does that work for everyone? Does anyone have any objections to doing it that way? Cool. Well, thank you, Jackie. That's
Okay.
very generous of you. I assume we don't need to make a motion or anything on such things. All right. Well, that's another thing down.
Melissa, can I ask a question before you move on?
Sure.
I apologize. I had in my in the stuff Rod sent a time June 24th, 7 p.m. At the top of my agenda.
Ooh. Sorry, that does say that.
So I missed the minutes. I had some concerns about minutes.
Okay.
So I just wanted to note, I understand stuff happens, but minutes were a concern for me. So I just want to bring that up. I don't know what to do. I'm late. I thought I was on time.
Even the version I have, Jeff, at the top it says note the meeting time 6:30, but in the Zoom details it says 7.
Right.
That's where I went, Brian, as a Zoom. I'm wrong no matter what I do.
I have to apologize. I have actually tried to replace this 7 with 6:30 multiple times. It's something to do with the way the calendar got set up by another. I mean, anyone would think that I'm working for the New York City government rather than, you know, 4 people. But I cannot unravel this mystery puzzle. Like, so every time you go to get the next version of the invite, it always says 7. I've got no idea why. And then we do it at 6:30.
So I presume you all voted about minutes. So what I have to say is moot.
Okay.
I'll send an email with comments.
Yeah, actually, Jeff, I'd encourage you to send minutes. Maybe send an email. Maybe you want to send it to me and Melissa, and then or whatever, and then.
Yeah, I'll CC everybody. They're not bad, but anyway, thank you.
Wait,
Sorry.
I imagine we could append the minutes by a motion at a future date.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever encountered that one. It's usually regarded as, you know, when the horse is bolted, it's bolted kind of thing. It's like if you wanted to note Jeff's concerns or something in the body of the minutes of a subsequent meeting, I think that would work. But I think it's actually pretty hard to go back and revote the minutes. I mean, that unless you're talking about something really extraordinary. But I
Depends
mean,
how persuasive that email is, Jeff.
Let's move on. I'll send my thoughts and I'll leave it to the group.
I'm not saying from a parliamentary standpoint or whatever, it's not possible. I just never encountered that one. I just, you know, it's usually, and some other expert on meeting procedure can overrule me, but my general sense is that Jeff is displaying the appropriate response, which is sort of like, I missed it, but you know. Sorry, Jeff. So we've now been joined by the other Jeff LaBelle.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
How was the meal?
You know, they throw a great meal at the TRORC, but sadly I was not able to enjoy it because I was in my office.
All right.
I tell you, they know how to go through meetings. Boy, that just zipped through.
Jerry's good.
Are you challenging us? Because we can do it.
The whole thing is rigged. It's just
Well, you're just in time to discuss the scope and duties of the wastewater working group, Jeff.
Perfect thing for after a meal.
Yeah.
So we had some discussion. I talked to Brian, and I don't know if it was communicated to others, but just about the wastewater group being a working group as opposed to a subcommittee. Just less formality that way, and it's unclear for the upcoming future what's really going to be happening because of lack of funding at this moment. So that was what we had discussed. Any thoughts, Jeff Goodrich?
Yeah, I thought we voted to create a committee. And in that context, I was prepared to talk about things. That said, we can revote and do a working group.
Jeff LaBelle?
yeah. I feel like we didn't spend a lot of time discussing exactly what this thing that we were voting was, how it was going to work, and I think it's appropriate to have that conversation now, and I would encourage us to think about it more as an informal working group and less as something kind of formal standing committee that's going to exist forever. I mean, this is something that is trying to address a particular issue. It seems to me something that's informal would be appropriate. That's just my personal view.
Do other people want to weigh in? Jeff Goodrich?
No, I'll
Sorry.
defer to others and then comment, Melissa. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Ernie, did you have your hand up?
I just would like to have a little bit clarification of what the advantage of one form over the other really would be, a committee versus a working group. I have no opinion right now, one way or the other.
Rod, do you want to address that?
Yeah, sure. So the single biggest difference, I guess, Ernie and others is set aside the semantics. So for whatever reason, Norwich, in the instance of the Conservation Commission and the Trails Committee and the Planning Commission and the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, have established that's the two that I know of, the Trails Committee and the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, sort of freestanding groups that answer to another appointed body. So the Affordable Housing Subcommittee is appointed by the Planning Commission. But it has a tradition of warning meetings, holding meetings in public, adopting fairly formal procedures for operation, and recording minutes, and working in that way. And it's a fairly large group. It's currently 7-ish, and it's now moving to a new phase where it's going to form working groups, and other people who are not members of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee can potentially populate those working groups. So it's a fairly large structure, and it's got those reporting requirements, if you like, that are to do with adhering to the intent and spirit of open meeting law. There's a different approach that's also really common and one that I'm probably more accustomed to, which is when there's a particular issue that's of concern within something like a planning commission, a small working group is assigned of people who are interested in doing it. Sometimes they might work with people who've got specialized knowledge or an area of involvement that are not part of the planning commission. They'll work out a particular problem. They don't have to warn those meetings because it's not a majority, it's not a quorum of the planning commission. They don't need to adhere to the same set of standards as the open meeting law. They also don't get to make very many decisions. So basically what would happen in that instance is that the working group would come back to the planning commission and say, last month we had these 3 meetings with these 6 people. We did this research, we got this email back from somebody from the state, and so this is what we did last month. And our recommendation is we should do A, B, and C. And then the planning commission would be like, go team, that's great, really good, or ask questions and try and get a better understanding of what was going on. From a professional standpoint, I don't have I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. What I'd say is it's more a question of sometimes it's obvious, or usually it's obvious, I would say, which is the better form. I think the Affordable Housing Subcommittee in Norwich does important work. It's been around a long time, and it's a sort of a standing subcommittee, if you like, with a body of work and a charge, and it can continue to operate. And it's a broader, bigger issue, if you like, than something like a wastewater study, which is narrower and more focused. And so you may benefit as a group by deciding that if you want something a little bit more nimble, that you know is basically made up of planning commissioners, just a subset of you, 3 or whatever, that's a better group to actually go off, gather information, bring things back to the planning commission, and do the filtering work that not all 7 or so planning commissioners have got time to do. So it's a decision for you guys to make. Jackie, Brian had his hand up, and then now Jackie's got her hand up, Melissa.
Oh, okay, Brian was first.
Thanks,
Go ahead.
Melissa. So that's how I understood it. Not as a separate body with decision-making authority, but something comparable to you could call them working groups on the chapters for the town plan, where it was folks who volunteered to spend a bit more time and effort gathering information and acting on behalf of the planning commission, not a separate body, in gathering evidence and facilitating communication among stakeholders. Yeah. So when I volunteered to be part of this subcommittee or working group, what have you, it was with that understanding that it would be essentially a designee of this larger group to bring back the insights and the initiatives of the stakeholder groups, rather than serving in an ongoing active role in another body.
Great, thanks. Jackie, did you want to add
just to reinforce what Brian said here, I look at this as we're only gathering information. That's all this group is really doing, is gathering information, whereas the Trails Committee and the Affordable Housing Committee have a really tactical mission where, let's build trails, let's get more housing. But this is just let's gather information and get smart is really what this is asking. That's what I see as trying to do here. So I think it is, as we've just pointed out, a subgroup of ourselves to gather more information so we can get smarter. Yeah.
Jeff Goodrich?
Yeah, I have a very different view. I mean, when I voted on this last time, I thought it was going to be something like the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. I don't have a problem with the Planning Commission revoting, and I'm only 1 vote, but I think that the controversy over the sewer issues, and I see Stuart is engaging as well, should consider or contemplate something like the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. I just want to back up. The Select Board's done a bunch of subcommittees over time. I remember doing the corridor committee that resulted in Ledger Bridge and Foley Park and the improvements along the corridor 10A into town. The Affordable Housing Subcommittee that the Select Board disbanded, the Planning Commission decided to take it up to create an autonomous charge for analysis, investigations, et cetera, to inform the Planning Commission, the community. And that's kind of how I see this sewer subcommittee, so that given the contention related to this topic, others in the community could also participate. And frankly, I was looking at the framework of what the subcommittee might be, and look at the Affordable Housing Subcommittee as sort of a baseline for how we build on the sewer committee and bring others on board.
Mm-hmm.
Ernie?
I sort of subscribe to the way Brian had described what his expectations were, because I thought of it and it is as sort of a learning process for the Planning Commission, but there would be 3 people who would gather the information, and at least 3 people, maybe is a better way of phrasing that, gathering the information, sort of processing it and pre-digesting it a bit, so to be presented to the Planning Commission to. So I'm still comfortable with either form, but I sort of had confused the concept of it being a subcommittee with it being a working group and a subcommittee. I felt that they were the same thing. So, like I said, I'm comfortable with whatever form the group chooses, but I definitely view it as a learning process, not a decision-making process. The decision-making process, I never thought of it was limited to that group. I thought it was just we were bringing stuff back to the Planning Commission, even though it was called the subcommittee. So, and I've actually been on things that have been called subcommittees, that's all we did. And I've been on boards that more or less just gather data in this town. So I really, I don't think it's quite as rigorous a format or rigorous tradition as Rod described, but I'm just willing to go along here in whichever way it goes. I was going to make one suggestion though. Is a working group able to incorporate people who are not on the Planning Commission? And if so, how do they get involved? Who would sort of bring them into the group? The working group itself, or the Planning Commission, or the Select Board, or what?
That's a good question that I do not know the answer to.
That's kind of tied to our next topic as well. But regarding the Affordable Housing Subcommittee and what they're doing, it's kind of a similar topic. If I could just add on my thoughts on this, because my understanding from volunteering my name was a combination of the extremes of what Brian was saying and what Jeff Goodrich was saying. I thought it was members of this group that really didn't have major authority to warn meetings or anything like that, but just to help move the information and research and conversations along, and most likely start with members of the Planning Commission. But I'm open to having others be part of the discussion or provide information if that's aiding us. And so my thinking was whatever we need to do to label this group or set the parameters to make sure that we are all okay with who's in the group and what their authority is. I would like there to be opportunities for others to provide input, but they could do it as a presentation, not necessarily as a subgroup, if others are more comfortable.
I think I saw Jeff LaBelle next.
I think Jackie had her hand up too. Jackie, did you?
Oh, sorry.
No, I just want to say I'm open to having others participate. I don't have any problem with that, but when I just want to emphasize this group is gathering information. That's what they're doing. That's what I see them doing, is gathering information.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I do think that a decision to form some kind of standing subcommittee that is going to have permanent members and it's going to, that's a big decision that in my view requires more than just like a quick motion. I mean, I think that would have required some discussion and some structure, and that's not what we did. So if we need to revote, that's fine. But I want to be really clear that the purpose of this, I mean, at some point we will need public input, and we will want public input, and we understand that this is a controversial topic. So it's not like we don't want to do it. It's just the planning commission, like any body, needs an ability to get some work done in between meetings, and needs a structure for doing that. And the structure for doing that is to set up an informal working group. So I would encourage us to take a new vote, just to kind of clarify that that's what we need.
Jeff Goodrich?
Yeah, I don't, somebody other than me is going to have to make that motion because I think I made the original motion. That's fine.
Actually, Jeff, I didn't catch your original motion, so I don't know.
Well, I made a motion to form a sewer subcommittee.
Oh, you mean last month, or you mean?
Yes.
Just not.
No. Last month.
Yeah. Okay.
So
That's
I don't think,
Whoops.
I don't have, fine, abolish my motion, that's fine. I think my main issue is personally goes to what Leah was saying, and that is we haven't done an after action review of the town plan and process and so forth, which I hope we'll do eventually at some point, what we've done over the last year. But my chief concern is providing an opportunity for each meeting, whatever that meeting is, for input to have others participate in that process. That's my chief concern.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, Brian?
Jeff, I don't actually disagree with you in the long term. I just think right now we're not there yet. You know, the Affordable Housing Subcommittee is made up of not necessarily all experts, but certainly lots of folks who are committed in their own ways to the objectives of the group. That's not how I saw my role in this wastewater working group, whatever. I don't have any particular expertise. I don't think Leah or Ernie does either. This was like serving a preliminary temporary function to get us going here. And one outcome of that in our outreach to stakeholders may be that this needs a more formalized ongoing group that either formally incorporates as members experts or only as consulted parties as advisors. I don't think we're there yet in knowing if that's necessary given the, let's say, incentives or interests at this time of the stakeholder groups.
So if I may, can somebody make a motion to move this along to create a working subcommittee?
Can I make a Rod, before I make a motion, did you have a question?
Just can we settle on the terminology? So if it's not going to be a subcommittee like the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, can we call it a working group?
Yeah, that's my yeah. So
That's the motion.
I move to create a working group for purposes of gathering information and reporting back to the Planning Commission regarding wastewater options in the town. And that this motion supersede the motion that was discussed in the last Planning Commission meeting with regard to a subcommittee.
Did you get all that, Rod?
Most of it. So let me just bring back to you in a second. I move to create a wastewater working group to study wastewater options available to the town and report back to the Planning Commission. And that this motion supersede, then you went on about superseding and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, it just supersedes the motion from the prior meeting,
In its meeting, yeah. Where we referenced the subcommittee.
Okay.
Stuart, did you have something to add?
We need a second, and then we can have a discussion.
That's right. Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Brian,
Okay, Brian.
I saw your hand first. Any discussion?
Stuart's got
Stuart?
his hand up.
Stuart?
Stuart Richards, 82 Elm Street, speaking as just a member of the public and someone who was on the sewer committee back in 2005, 15 years ago, along with Jeff Goodrich, before he went to serve the country in Iraq, I think it was. My concern here is that there be full transparency and that you are fully cognizant and aware and willing to observe the formalities of the public meeting law. I think that the public has a part to play in this, especially since, as have been pointed out by several of your members, that the subject is controversial. There are people who have various interests and various levels of knowledge. And I do think that the public has something to contribute. And I would love to see the public included in each of the meetings, and that there be minutes taken, and that you do observe the public meeting law. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Does anyone have anything else to add? Okay, if not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Say nay.
I'm opposed.
Thanks.
So I have to recount 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 6-1.
I'd like to oppose, I think.
Are you, I'm trying to understand what you just did. Are you trying
I'm
to
changing my
how you
vote.
voted?
I'm changing my vote
So you're changing your vote from yes
Yeah.
to no?
simply because I would like to see, I'll explain it. I would like to see the public invited and able to have some sort of connection to this group.
Okay.
If it's a working group, I'm not sure that that's the case. Whereas from what everyone has said, the subcommittee, as far as I'm concerned, it's still about simply getting information, but it's important probably to get it from everybody, not just.
So just to be clear, the vote then should be 5-2. Is that what you're saying?
5-2.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, everyone. Jackie?
Yeah, I just want to add, I don't think anything that we just agreed to precludes, minutes or public input. I don't see that we precluded any of that through this direction. But and so, mounting huge criticism on those 2 points, I would wait to see how the subgroup conducts themselves before I would be a critic. That would be my input.
Thanks. Rod, were we going to go over any more details of what's going on with?
Well, I'm just looking at the agenda now. For some reason or other, we're going to switch gears for a little while and talk about the Affordable Housing Subcommittee recruitment thing, and then come back to talking about discuss the next steps on the town wastewater study. Do you want to? You want to move 9 up to this now and then round this out really quickly?
Sure, that'd be great. If no one opposes that, then we'll make a move. Jeff?
Hang on a second.
Well, no, had I been here at 6:30, I was going to suggest we do that. So
we're a bit behind you, Jeff.
Yeah, we wish you were there.
I'm always wrong. I'm just saying.
No, you got it right. Your timing was impeccable. Okay, so let's move 9 up to number 8, and then really quickly, just in well, first of all, Stuart has his hand up. Melissa.
Oh, I looked down. Sorry, Stuart. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to reinforce what Jeff has said. He's not the only one who's fallible in terms of reading the agenda, because I assumed only reading the second line that 7 p.m. was the start also. So,
Okay.
But one further thing, it seems to me that you could certainly stipulate, as a follow-on to what Jackie said, you could certainly stipulate that the open meeting law and the meetings of the working group, or whatever you want to call it, be open to the public, and that you take minutes and observe those formalities, regardless of how or what you call it. So I'd just love to see you stipulate to that, so that the people who are going to be on the working group know what the ground rules are.
Jeff Goodrich, I think your hand was up.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I agree with what I think Stuart's trying to say, we're not, if it's a working group of a non-quorum component of the Planning Commission, there's no right to know requirement. Nonetheless, I agree with the principles that he's offering.
Okay, thanks. Other Jeff?
Yeah, I just want to say that I am, you know, there will come a time when we need a formal process for making a decision around sewer that is going to require meetings and agendas, et cetera. There will come a time when we need to do that. We're not there yet. We agreed to set up an informal process so that people can just work and get some work done. And it's not a formal meeting, and there's no requirement, if it's not a quorum of this committee, that there be all of that formality. So let's just, you know, move forward with gathering the information we need to gather. And then when it comes time for a more formal process, I'm all in favor of instituting it. I just don't think we're ready at this point.
Okay, Jeff, maybe one last comment.
Yeah, as a member of the Planning Commission, I would have liked to have participated in various subcommittees with the town plan. I wasn't afforded that opportunity. So I'm a little bit skeptical going forward.
Okay, thanks for that. Ernie, one more.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is that regardless of what we call it, it seems to me there's no problem with formalizing a little bit, keeping open, you know, adhering to the open meeting laws, at least you know, so insofar as keeping good records and so on and so forth. The other thing is that what I think is important is because it's already been discussed tonight that this is a contentious issue, that means that there is going to be sort of different sides from which information is going to come from. And if the public is not allowed to at least have access to the committee, we might get a lot of information from one side and very little from the other side. And that's not fair. And I've seen a couple of instances in this town where that seems to have been how things worked, as information came from one side only and decisions were then made at an official level when other information was completely ignored and or just not made available. And so that's to the group. So that's why I think it's really good for us to have, well, I should say it's really good for the public to have access to the working group.
Well, I guess my understanding is that anything the working group does is they're going to bring back to the Planning Commission. And mostly it's just going to be talking, you know, perhaps to the to the select board or to the school to see what's going on. So to me, that still is a public forum where this information is going to be presented, and that
but it's not just that. If let's say, if somebody who is, if all our information comes from proponents of a sewer line, then that's the only information we're going to have, and anyone who's opposed to the sewer line would be would only have the occasional meetings that are hearings where somebody can from the public can speak. Whereas if
This meeting right now, every planning commission.
Every month we have a planning commission meeting.
and all
You're
three of you
here
are
for this
here.
meeting Now.
but that's not where the information comes into.
Yeah.
No one brings data. I have never seen anyone come to the select board, or it comes to the subcommittees generally, where people will bring their reams of data and their proposals and all that sort of stuff. The only thing that a hearing tends to bring up are criticisms of what has already been done. Whereas what I'm saying is this is very contentious, and it seems to me that right from day one, anything that the town starts to do formally in this matter should have public input from all the sources, not from all sides, not one or
Well,
two.
my understanding is that, I mean, they're not going to be taking any actions. They're going to be just reporting what they find out from other groups or other individuals about what's going on and what the status is. And they're going to just be bringing that back to the Planning Commission, and just like, the Affordable Housing Committee has a report, each month we ask them what's going on, that they would present that information to us. And you'll be on it. So, I mean, I guess I'm a little confused, but Rod, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want, I'm conscious of the time, and just want to point out that you've moved a motion, which is given a direction, and you kind of, I want to try and sound as impartial as possible. You're sort of re-litigating the case after the motion's already been voted. So I just want to point out, in terms of the agenda and the time, how you're spending that time. And then the last comment I want to say, and I mean this in a way to reassure everybody that's present, including Stuart, the point that Brian just made is exactly correct. The working group, if it's formed and functions effectively, can't move beyond its monthly report outs to this body, the Planning Commission, which is open to the public and warned, and now on TV effectively, and is therefore viewable endlessly. If there are issues with the way the working group is functioning in terms of where it's drawing its information from or what it's proposing to the Planning Commission, other planning commissioners who haven't participated, or anybody in the public, even just a casual passerby, has the right to interrogate the working group and to seek redirection of their work or their inclusion of voices that haven't been heard, or whatever the concern is, or it could be the exact opposite. It could be, this is not technically sufficient, that the information lacks some kind of technical proficiency. So all I'd say is that it's going to be a thing for the Planning Commission to pay attention to. Like a good working group is a hard thing to do, and a good Planning Commission is a hard thing to do, and you have to pay attention to each of these pieces. But it's not the case just because this is going to be 3 people leading a bunch of focused work that no one else is going to get to have the opportunity to ask them what they're doing. The only way they get to keep on doing what they're doing is to constantly share their work with the larger group. And that's, the larger group is the thing that gives the working group, A, it allows it to exist, and B, it directs it. So if we could get to that part where we talk about what you think this working group should be doing, and I actually think that given the hour, tonight is not the night for that. But I wanted to try and reassure everybody that a functioning working group, a well-functioning working group, is only gonna do what the Planning Commission basically directs it to do. So Jeff Goodrich has his hand up.
Jeff?
Yeah, I appreciate what Rod's saying, but my experience in the last year and a half does not support that.
Mhm.
All right, so I had some things that I wanted to report out on in terms of last month. So I guess it's to do with next steps, but maybe if we're still having a hard time resolving the scope of the working group, maybe you can discuss now whether you want to try and get into a discussion about the scope or deal with the other matters on the agenda and change when you want to do this. The thing that I've been asked to do, I believe that the last meeting was to check in with the school board and try and establish what they're up to and what their appetite for working with the Planning Commission was. And so I actually did meet with Tom Camden and staff from the school district. And I don't have much to report out except a couple of things. They've already made a commitment to truck out the waste and close off the leach field, basically, and starting when school goes back in the fall. Mm-hmm. I explained to them that in fact Tracy Hall only has a storage tank. It doesn't have a leach field. It doesn't have a functioning septic. It just has a tank like a huge RV, and that it's trucked away. And so that if they wanted to actually try and connect with the town and see if they jump in on that contract or whatever, that they were welcome to do that. the town manager is open to that and feels like that could be a useful short-term solution to the problem. And I understand the waste just goes to the Hartford wastewater treatment plant and is pumped. So that's the first thing. So that the issue of timing and urgency that in part gave rise to the desire to form the working group that people just been talking about, was the sort of pressing nature of the school's decision-making process. And I think that they've already recognized that they just can't deal with the problem that they've got in any meaningful way. And so they've decided to pump for the foreseeable future. That still leaves what to do with the town green, which is also the leach field, and how best to manage that going forward. And they're working on that. The other part is that they've obviously got other things on that are really pushing them in terms of their administrative capacity and their planning capacity, mostly around COVID-19 and what that's going to look like. So while I recognize the importance of this, the whole school district is really absorbed with how to deal with what's going on. Then the next point is that they recognize that the logical, rational planning approach is probably the best approach for them and for the town as a whole, and that they are willing to look at how that would work. Tom Camden was going to take that issue back to his board and see if his board was ready to start discussing those broader wastewater planning issues with our select board and us. I made Tom aware of the formation of the working group, and that the Planning Commission was interested to know how it could support the school in its own decision-making process around wastewater. And he welcomed the interest and said that he would, again, discuss that with his own board, and that he expected in the next 4 or 5 weeks to be in touch with the Planning Commission and through me, basically. And so it was a good discussion, and we went through the various technical issues, but I think that the sense of urgency that the Planning Commission had, that they're about to embark on a large-scale capital project that would potentially result in a town not being able to, have a wastewater system that would be part of this solution. That seems to be less pressing right now. And lastly, on a completely different level and in a completely different space, the legislature has been considering affordable housing legislation rather abruptly, again, in the context of COVID-19, as in shaping the agenda and shaping how people are working. And it's about to, the legislature is about to go into summer recess, but it's likely that in August, the legislation that was voted out of committee today will be up for a vote in the House. And if it goes forward the way it's written now, there'll be a mandate that would certainly change the context for contemplating adding sewer to a water system, or adding water to a sewer system, depending on which town you're talking about and what you've got. Because the mandates would call for minimum parcel sizes if land is serviced by both water and sewer that are very small, relatively speaking. And so towns like Norwich would now have to think through the consequences of the mandate as around land use and affordable housing in the context of agreeing or voting on whether to join or establish a wastewater system that then coincided with an existing water system. And so if you want to look at it, it's S237. You can just Google Vermont State Vermont Legislature S237 and read the draft.
Good.
And then
question. I have a
Oh,
question
sorry,
for
Jeff, I didn't
Rod.
see you.
I have a question for Rod. So when you said the urgency, I mean, it sounds like they're going to pump for starting in September. But did they say that they've now decided not to sort of make any sort of put something before the voters next March, or is that still something that they're contemplating?
They're still working on it, and they recognize that there are a lot of pieces to this puzzle that just aren't falling at all their way. So right now, they would be aiming to try and work with Hartford. Hartford's town manager has resigned. Hartford's about to go into a long process of finding a new town manager. They got no clear agreement out of Hartford in the last go around that Hartford would receive their waste. The engineering study that they needed to do to satisfy Hartford's concerns, I'm not sure about the status of that. I understood it was being negotiated, but I don't know how much movement has happened on that study. And so they don't know about the politics in Hartford. They don't know about the management in Hartford in terms of accepting a new customer. And they don't know exactly what the landscape is going to be for Vermont state funding support for any kind of study or offsetting the cost of doing the capital program that would be involved in connecting to Hartford. So they recognize that they've got a lot of pieces that they just can't get an answer to. And so cognizant of all that, they're still putting together something for March, but they're not entirely sure what that's going to look like given the number of unknowns that they're encountering right now.
No, I raised that because it still seems to me that if the school board is aiming to put something before its voters in March, that's still a pretty quick timetable, and it's faster than our timetable had been. So it's not like it's happening tomorrow, but it does suggest a need to still move forward with some level of urgency to try to kind of figure out how if at all, we can sync up. We may not want to sync up. I'm not saying we do, but we wouldn't want to miss that opportunity. What I'm hearing for you is there might be more willingness than maybe we thought for them to sort of take a slower approach and sync up with a more sustained planning effort. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. Let me say a slightly different way. I think that the more they look at it, the more they realize they're not likely to make the cutoff, which is really December or January, to do the March vote. Because there's a number of pieces that are not in place. And so I think they're beginning to recognize the possibility that this might be a longer haul for them. I think that they were holding out hope that there would be a technical solution that would enable them to repurpose to do something with the green and to continue using some kind of system on site. But I think that they've finally accepted that they're going to have to pump. And under those circumstances, I think they're thinking this might be a much longer haul for them than they initially intended. I think that's the sense that I got from it. But I don't want to put words in Tom's or the school board's mouth. I want to be really clear that he was going to take that back. The idea of talking with the planning commission and talking to the select board, he was going to take that back to his board. And, so the ball is kind of in their court. If we hear from them soon, that will be great. I don't know for sure how they're going to really settle down on this, but he did enumerate all those factors. And, I think that showed, reasonable judgment. I mean, I think it's a complex undertaking, and they're really, what's the word I'm looking for? They're really challenged by other things on their plate right now.
Yeah, right.
Stuart?
So Jeff Goodrich, Pathways, is probably the most knowledgeable person on what's going on. I just will add to what Rod has just said. There was a recent hydrogeologist's report that was actually confirmed by the state hydrogeologist, according to Terry Shearer, who's the state engineer, that the existing system really can't be replaced on the green in any way, shape, manner, or form. And Jeff, correct me here if I'm misstating it, but due to the frost considerations. So what's happening, my understanding, and I'm only one person obviously, my understanding is that they're looking for other alternatives, such as Huntley Meadows or such as the Dresden School Lands, as a place where effluent could be disposed of. And I'd like to hear what Jeff has to say, because again, I think he's more knowledgeable than I am, both from an engineering perspective and also perhaps he's more informed than I am with respect to what the school board is doing, what Tom Gannon is doing. Jeff?
Actually, I raised my hand for Melissa to recognize me.
Jeff?
Thank you, Melissa. So to address Rod's comments, and Rod said a whole bunch of things. I think one thing I want to make clear, I'm here as a planning commission member, and if there's a question about my service to the school district and there's a need to recuse, let me know, I'll recuse. I think in brief summary, the district has documented through official capacity that during frozen conditions, the green simply doesn't work the way things are currently arrayed. That said, to the extent there are frozen conditions and it's not working, then pumping would be a reasonable alternative as opposed to shutting the green down. So I'm not sure the district is going to need to pump in September if they open up, but I think the district certainly, and I'm not speaking for the district, but the district does have plugged in the notion of the exorbitant cost of pumping during the times when the ground may be frozen to prevent the outbreak on the ground surface. I'm not going to speak to the alternatives that the district may pursue, other than to say, in terms of permanent solutions and public funding, the public funding cycle that I think Rod alluded to is very time consuming, whether it's VEGI, CDBG, USDA-RD, state revolving funds. So it's a year out from what I think Rod said, if the public funds are available. That said, I want to transition into some other comments that I heard Rod say. My desire personally would be to see this sewer working group, whatever it's called, engage directly with the school officials. I think it's prudent for the sewer working group to work with school officials to engage the select board. With respect to what this working group does, I'd like to suggest that the working group contemplates what the real scope of a sewer study might be and come back to the Planning Commission with that. And then I think finally, my comment was going to be with respect to a really important thing that Rod said, which isn't the first time relative to affordable housing. The key hurdle, which Amy Sheldon led the Act 250 working group with respect to affordable housing, and candidly, nothing happened. So to me, the key threshold, whether it's neighborhood development areas, all of it's meaningless unless there's a way to address what the Act 250 paradigm is. So I talked to a couple folks today, one regional planning commissioner, as a matter of fact, about the implications of affordable housing, which is, I think, critical. But unless Act 250 is addressed, I'm not sure that there's much change afoot.
Okay, I don't want to shut this discussion down, but I am cognizant of time. We're at 8 o'clock and we still have a couple more agenda items. So if there's further discussion, could we put it towards in our next meeting?
I just have one question. I just want Rod to say what that Senate bill number was again.
237.
237?
Yeah, 237.
237? Okay, got it.
Great, thanks. So Rod, did you want to talk about the town wastewater study? Was that the next thing we were gonna?
Wait,
Oh, sorry, Leah, go ahead.
can we figure out timing? Like how much longer are we talking? What are we doing here?
Well, we have the wastewater study and then the affordable housing subcommittee recruitment that I think you all probably reviewed. So those are the things we have left, major agenda items. Jackie, did you have something?
Yeah, I want to suggest that the working group work on the scoping document and bring it back to the next meeting.
I think that's fair.
So the one that take what Rod has worked on
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, this draft here that we were gonna, yeah, exactly, the one that's in the packet, yep.
okay,
And that they review it and come back with their recommendation on how they think it might be changed or whatever for the next meeting.
okay.
Is that a motion, Jackie, or do we want to go
Yeah.
that way?
Yeah,
Or-
I'll make it a motion, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Do we,
Any second?
do we need a motion for that? Is that an action?
No,
I
I
don't
was just trying to figure out, it's okay.
I
I'm
don't
just
think it's a
gonna,
motion.
suggesting a way to move this along is what I'm
Yeah.
suggesting.
I just,
Okay, any discussion?
I-
We're just gonna make it a motion. You seconded it, Jeff?
No, my discussion is that we don't need a motion.
Okay,
so if you just all want, if there's consensus that you all just want to have a working group do it, that's totally cool. That's fine.
okay. Working
Just go do
group,
it.
you have your assignment. Okay,
Sorry,
then
sorry.
moving on.
Melissa, can I just make that
Yes,
clear? I mean to belabor it. Rod said that Tom would be reporting back to us via him. Is Rod still entrusted with that line of communication? Is that the idea? I just want to be clear.
can he be trusted?
I don't know, I'm probably, I
Maybe
speak
trusted
Russian.
on some things.
That's not the point, folks. What I said in my discussion was to ask the
Right.
sewer working committee to reach out to the district and coordinate directly. I'd like this to be a planning commission-led effort, not a staff-led effort.
So
Okay, I was just thinking logistically that Tom was supposed to get back in touch with Rod, so then Rod could forward that information.
I'm perfectly happy to be nothing more than a cipher. If Tom inadvertently contacts me because he can't contact all of you, I will just pass it on. Okay?
lovely.
Okay,
Fine, thank
I
you.
mean, I'm like,
great.
Great.
we are not meeting in a phone box and we are not discussing Supreme Court appointments in any detail.
Okay, so Rod has promised, and we are holding them to that. But let's talk about the Affordable Housing Subcommittee recruitment. Jeff LaBelle, would you like to lead that discussion?
Yeah, so if you remember at the last meeting, Planning Commission meeting, we talked about the sort of desire to add additional members of the committee because there's a lot of work that's needed to implement the housing strategy. And the request was that I go back to the Affordable Housing Subcommittee and discuss it. And the document that you have in your packet is what we came up with. It's essentially, it was kind of what, just to be clear, the way it was created was this was something that I initially shared with the group, and then we edited it while I was on the phone to kind of add the language. So we are requesting that the planning, we understand that the Planning Commission is the body that would do the recruitment. The Affordable Housing Subcommittee can't recruit on its own, and we're just suggesting that you move forward and seek applications. And Rod suggested that we use the application that the town uses for its committees, which makes sense. So there's a space for that to be inputted. I do want to note one thing that Leah suggested at the very end, which is that, people should be able to volunteer and not join the whole committee, but just volunteer to be on a working group.
I had a question about that. Do they still have to submit that application, or how does that work?
I don't know.
My suggestion is that they could just email somebody and say that they don't have to submit an application if all they want to do is be on a working group. But
Okay, so can we put, because you're chair, right, Jeff?
it can be me. Rod thought, one option is that it goes to Rod, and then Rod, I don't know. No, you don't want to be the one. That's fine. They can email me. That's fine.
Okay, so they can email you.
Tom Candon.
I'm sorry.
Send it to Tom Candon.
So if people want to join a working group and they don't want to apply for the committee, they can just send me an email. That's fine.
Okay. So did anyone else have any questions for Jeff? Jeff?
Yeah, participating in the Affordable Housing Subcommittee meeting, I think my key concern at this point, we've got 4 people. How do we choose? What are the threshold criteria for the selection?
So it's a good question. I mean, I think my view is that we should prioritize people who express a strong commitment to the cause. And if there are more than 4 people who want to join, that we would prioritize people with skills that would be helpful for the committee. I tend to doubt we're going to get more than 4 people joining, but you know, if we do,
Be nice.
yeah, we would talk with them. And
Hip group.
just the proposal here is that the people who apply would then come to the Affordable Housing Committee meeting, and there would be an opportunity to speak with them there and learn more about their interests and background. And then the Affordable Housing Committee would subcommittee would make a recommendation to the Planning Commission based on that interview process about how to proceed. But given that the town is having problems getting anybody to join committees, I'm not sure we're going to be in that position where we need more, where we, you know, end up having to pare it down, but perhaps.
Leah, did you want to add to that?
Having attended the subcommittee meeting and to both the points of recruitment issues and process, my understanding from what was typed up to be presented to the Planning Commission was really to get the announcement out. There could be, if we feel that something is missing, we could say as the Planning Commission, this looks good, or make any edits, and then say back to the subcommittee, please put together a process of how you would determine between how many people, because in the meantime, people are submitting. You still have time to review. I think that's a possibility, but that was one reason why the working group members were suggested, because the way Jeff LaBelle presented, I thought the information was really well. It was presented in different types of little groups you could join. And some people may be more interested in a certain topic for a certain time period rather than a full-on committee. And that could also infuse engagement of members of the public to say, hey, I was a part of this topic for this amount of time, helped in this way. So I was very supportive of that, but I'm wondering if there's concern about needing to have a selection process, if we just push that back, or make a recommendation, since they have to come to us, we make a recommendation of what that process is.
Okay.
You know, if I could just add one thing, I mean, I completely agree that it's important to think through and be careful about applications, but I also note that the select board makes numerous appointments to all kinds of committees, and they don't have a set of criteria, you know, that are formalized for every single committee appointment. And so it seems to me there is a general understanding and approach that you want people who are qualified and are committed. And I think that's enough, in my view.
Ron?
So let me just get this clear. So I think what I'm hearing from Jeff LaBelle is not what I heard from Leah. So I'm just trying to, for the sake of, I mean, we haven't got, if you want to add something, ask me to put something in the minutes about this item, then please keep that in mind as you're speaking, but I'm just a little bit confused as to what was going on there. If I could summarize it in my own words, just so that you can tell me whether I got it wrong or right. So you're saying in the instance where you have this groundswell of interest and you have like multiple people applying and a limited number of slots, you could have 2 choices. You could increase the number of people, or you could interview and have kind of a competition. And
That was not what I suggested.
okay,
But
so what?
we could do that. I mean, what's laid out in the document that is in the packet,
Right.
the process, right? The
Yeah,
process is that we make an announcement, and that the people who are interested in actually joining the committee, as opposed to just joining a working group, would submit an application, right? And they would be required to attend the Affordable Housing Subcommittee meeting, which would then have an opportunity to talk with them and would make a recommendation as if there are more than 4 people as to which ones to approve. So that was the proposal. But the announcement includes an option for people who don't want to commit to full on joining the subcommittee, but just want to commit to being part of a working group, to contact me, and they would be, have that opportunity to join that.
Yep, sure.
Brian, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I would be in favor of at least some endorsement now of the kind of guiding principles for selection that Jeff talked about. And the reason is not the scenario with more than 4 applicants. The reason is a scenario with only 1 or 2. If Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck walk in the room, you don't want to be forced to put them in the group. And
Right.
I think we can outline up front some goals and principles that we hope to adhere to, acknowledging that there's a sense of unpredictability about who and how many is going to walk through the door.
So would that go in the advertisement? Would this be edited, or is that
I
something?
think that's a sense of this group about what standards will apply, whether or not there are more applicants than spots. Not necessarily, not
Brian,
necessarily a scoring criteria for applicants.
what criteria can you suggest? Just, you said, I had suggested that we focus on their commitment to the issue and on whether or not they have skills that can be useful. Do you have thoughts on other criteria we should add?
I think the intent here is that this is for the productive implementation of the strategy as approved by that group, this group, and every other group last year, and that that should be the overriding principle guiding us, is that this person is committed to working in a collaborative fashion to implement the objectives and activities outlined in that document.
Okay. Jeff Goodrich?
Yeah, I mean, to reference the select board process, which is arguably arbitrary and capricious, we can say, pitch yourself, because I've been evicted because of my experience, and I've been put on boards because of my experience. So I think if the key criterion is with respect to implementation of the what Brian just said, then state that. So pitch us with respect to how we're going to implement the plan, and we'll consider your application. I think if the question is what skills do you bring to the table, I look around the current affordable housing subcommittee, and there are folks that have skills and there are folks that don't, but everyone on that subcommittee is committed to the subcommittee.
Well, I'm perfectly comfortable with the idea that the criteria are their commitment to affordable housing and to implementing effectively the housing strategy that was adopted. So if you're
Okay.
comfortable with that,
So that doesn't need to go in the advertisement though. So like we're good to go
I don't think
with
so.
your draft of that. Don't really have an opinion one way or the other. Just trying to see where we're going with this.
I mean, the idea is Jeff, that they would come to the subcommittee for like a first cut discussion or interview. To Jeff Goodrich's point, maybe it shouldn't be a surprise that that's the first question. I'd be open to it being in the announcement that the guiding bit of the selection process is going to be all the things that you just said. I think that's fine to include in the announcement.
Okay. So can we add a sentence that says something like, basically just says that the main criteria for joining the committee are commitment to the issue of affordable housing and to effectively implementing the Norwich housing strategy. Does that work? Okay.
That's fine with me. Does anyone have any other comments about that? Rod?
So if the group is happy with that, then do you want to, Jeff, do you just want to make those changes to the document and then it's all good? I guess that's what I'm trying to, just from the minute standpoint. I didn't take any notes on a whole lot of this conversations. I just want to get a sense of how you want to record this for the sake of the minutes.
I think what I hear is there was consensus, hopefully, in proceeding with the selection process as outlined in the document, with one exception, which is the addition to that letter of a statement indicating that the primary qualifications for the new members are commitment to affordable housing and to effectively implementing the Norwich housing strategy. Does that sound well?
That sounds good to me. Looks like everyone's nodding.
Yep.
They're just
So,
tired. They want to go home.
Sleep.
okay, so any other business? Yeah. Future meetings, schedule and agendas, any agenda items people want to see on for next time? Jeff?
Yeah, my only comment is, can we make the meetings at 6:30?
We were here.
Sure, Jeff.
Yeah.
Oh, where were
I'm
you?
much in favor of that.
I was
Or
on another
6.
Zoom call.
All right.
5?
Jackie has her hand up.
Jackie.
Yeah, I mean, the 3 topics I see for August are, I'll report back on the action item assignment, communication. We'll hear from the sub-working group about the scoping document for the wastewater study. And we'll hear from the Affordable Housing Committee on appointments, or recommendations for appointments. Does that sound right?
That sounds right to me. Leah?
Are we also reviewing again Rod's review of town plan calendaring strategy? Or are we done with that, or is it a continuing item? It's one of the
I'm
agenda
not
items
sure.
now.
I'm not sure what that was.
It's one of the agenda items now, I thought. I just wasn't sure if it's a standing item that we'll continue to discuss town plan
Action items?
action items, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so Jackie's gonna make a report because she's gonna start reaching out to people and then let us know if she needs any
Yeah.
assistance on that.
Yeah.
I think that will be how it will show up on the next agenda.
Yeah. Leah, you're talking about progress on the action items? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, yes, that
Okay.
for sure. And then I don't know, I mean, to other people's points from months prior, I don't know when the best time is to do, we did discuss, it was having to do with when everything's approved appropriately of, to do a debrief of how we worked on the town plan.
Okay.
But
Do
I would,
people-
which I would imagine would happen sometime summer, fall, but I'm not sure the appropriate time, and we can discuss that later.
I mean, I'm open to it. Do people want to do that on the next meeting? Jeff does. Any other nods, nos, hellos? Okay. We can add that as an agenda item. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. There's no comments from the people. They all left. So is there a motion to adjourn? Brian, a second?
So moved.
I'll go Jackie on this one because you were both same time. So all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Have a good night, people.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.